This episode of Lawyers Tell All is brought to you by the Intake Academy. Do you know how to cement relationships with more of your ideal clients, get them to commit to you, and send you more referrals than you ever thought possible? Visit www.intakeacademy.com, where you will get the strategies you need to make the most of your marketing and advertising dollars. Plus, develop a team of intake specialists and attorneys who convert more qualified case opportunities and build meaningful relationships with prospective clients. Welcome to the Lawyers Tell All podcast, where Chris Mullins, the preeminent sales and communications consultant in the legal industry, shows you how it looks through lawyers' eyes. Here, innovators in the trenches provide powerful insights that help you connect with new clients, handle the sometimes harsh realities of the legal profession, and embrace the mindsets needed to succeed. Be sure to visit our website at www.lawyerstellall.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, lean in, tune in, and let's take a deep dive.
Hello, everyone. It's Chris Mullins with Lawyers Tell All, and today I am interviewing Ben Leader, attorney Ben Leader, and Ben is going to tell you a little bit about himself.
Thanks so much for having me on, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to join you today. Again, my name's Ben Leader. I am a managing partner at Elrod Pope Law Firm. We're a personal injury firm located in Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is what you can see behind me here. We're essentially a suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina, and so we're right on the state line, and we practice all types of injury law in the Carolinas. And my role here is more of a managing partner role, where I still do have some active cases, but mainly focus on our firm's intake and marketing efforts. Our firm's 45 years old, so we've been around for a long time. My dad was a former partner of the firm. He's of counsel now, and he started working here when I was 1 year old. So I kind of grew up in the firm. Yeah, there's pictures of me crawling on the carpet, sadly, the state carpet up until a few years ago, probably. But, so I got to grow up around the business and around the firm, and, never really planned on coming back here or being in this room, as an attorney, but that's just kind of how life goes sometimes. And so here I am, kind of full circle. And, I've found that my role in particular, I really enjoy the business side of law. A lot of attorneys, I think, really get, their juices flowing by doing closing arguments and being in front of a jury. But my situation was a little unique because I stepped into a firm that had 6 or 7 really good trial lawyers that were extremely experienced, hundreds of cases under their belt from prosecutor days, high profile cases. And so I was looking around, and the best I'll ever be as a trial lawyer is probably not even close to where they're at now, and trying to figure out how I could bring value to the firm. And it kind of just naturally led me towards more of the business of law than the practice of law. And I still enjoy both, and I still try to wear 2 hats sometimes, which isn't always ideal. But I found that, letting them practice law and letting me try to manage the business has been a good recipe for us the last couple of years.
That's awesome. So what made you decide to become an attorney? I mean, I know your dad and everything, but I don't know, that might not be the answer. So
yeah, I think as cliche as it sounds, it really was him. He's always been just kind of a role model. He's been my best friend, somebody I really look up to. And helping people is something that I've always been driven to, just growing up in this community, and people coming up to him when we're at dinner and thanking him for what he had done for them, or, helping them get through a really tough time. And so I just saw kind of the impact on a individual level, over the years. Really didn't put a whole lot of weight into it until I ended up in law school, and got to clerk for a year after that with a local judge, and saw a lot of different types of law, a lot of different types of lawyers, good and bad, and quickly realized people is, where I want to be, helping people, not, big insurance or anything like that.
yeah, well, that's wonderful. So now you mentioned intake and marketing. So those are the two areas you're responsible for.
That's right. And the last few years, I've kind of been able to just stick my head in the sand when it comes to finances, and really focus on spending the money, but not worrying about it. But I'm now being pulled more in that direction too, where it all works together. I think so. I'd say financials are becoming more of something I am closely monitoring, but mainly intake and marketing, trying to get folks in the door, and get them signed up.
Okay, well, so what does that look like? What does that look like for you managing intake and marketing? What's
Yeah, so I guess it may be good to just give you a kind of a brief snapshot of where we were when I stepped into kind of the management role. It was late 2021. We were coming off of two really bad years of signed cases and revenue just declining. 2020 was a tough year for us, like I think it was, a lot of injury law firms, COVID type, problems started setting in. And then 2021, I think, was an even worse year for us. And so we were just heading in the wrong direction. And we really didn't know where to start. And our solution for decades had always been, let's go spend more money on marketing. Let's go spend more money on marketing. And for some reason, we decided to take a step back, and we actually pulled one of our six-figure marketing campaigns that we hadn't had much success with, and essentially pivoted those funds into creating an intake department. Prior to that, we had no intake team members. Our intake system was essentially whatever attorney or paralegal was available at the time that call came in, and that created a lot of friction and a lot of leakage. And, it still makes me sick to my stomach thinking, 30, 40 years, how much business we lost by not having our pulse, wrapped around the intake process. But it was just a foreign concept to us. And I think the attorneys, again, were also focused on their cases and practicing law. Nobody really took a lot of time to analyze the front end of our business and make sure, it was optimized.
Yeah. Do you call so do you it's gonna sound funny. Do you call intake, or do you call it sales or intake sales, or
So we technically call it intake right now. It's funny you asked that question because I actually just talked to Michelle, our intake manager, a little while ago about possibly shifting some titles around to maybe new client manager, new client specialist. It's something a little warmer and more welcoming. When I think of the word intake, I often think of doctor's office lobby with the plexiglass and clipboard where you're filling out paperwork.
yeah.
And that's not what we want to be. We kind of want to be the opposite of that. And so I think we're considering shifting the terminology. But in my mind, at the end of the day, I truly believe it's sales when it all comes down to it.
Yeah. Okay. What does your team think though? How do they feel about that S word sales?
I think they've embraced it. And, we've tried to make it more of a sales type department than it ever was historically. By having things like incentives in place and really, getting them motivated to track their numbers and improve their numbers and their conversions. And, I've quickly learned my team's very easily motivated, very highly motivated. But it took us a few years to get the right people in place. I know better than anybody how hard it is to find, good intake members.
Yeah. It definitely is. But are your folks virtual or in the office, or
They're both in the office.
they're in the office? Well, how many do you have?
We have two. And quite frankly, I'd say our volume probably supports 1.5. But it's one of those positions like I would much rather be overstaffed a little bit on, just because it's so easy to get burnt out in that role. And, with after hours and weekends mixed in too, sometimes they just need a breather, and I completely get it. I would really struggle if I had to do that all day, every day.
100%. So when you just said about the struggle part, you just reminded me of something. So, mental health, do you focus on that at all on any level with, we'll say intake, but really like everybody, like your attorneys, paralegals, do you folks have any focus on that with your teams, or?
Yeah, we probably don't focus on it nearly enough. I think we recognize that everybody is dealing with folks who have very challenging circumstances, very heavy situations going on. And so, we have this year in particular had a lot more, I'd say, focus on things like, a client bringing up the possibility of suicide. And we've had some group, think discussions and meetings, and we've actually rolled out some policies now on what to do, when that happens. And we try to really give our staff flexibility if they need time off or a PTO day or a mental health day, that they have the ability to do that. And in this line of work, I think it's necessary. I mean, I need those occasionally myself, just
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
So
always more we can be doing and, trying to get ahead of that versus reactive to it.
100%. But the suicide, what did you come up with?
Well, I think first we had to educate our team members on, ethically what the law provides we can and can't do. And sadly, there's some clients that may be more inclined to make threats that, it's very difficult to have to gauge how serious somebody is about something like that and how far to take it in terms of possibly breaching, what could be confidentiality to try to get them help. And so, the main focus I think for the team was this isn't a decision you guys need to make, that here's kind of the parameters, but you need to come get somebody involved immediately up the chain to deal with that, situation while we've got them on the phone.
Yeah. I think some firms, um, they do like a warm transfer to a support group or something like that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. But like you said, what you can do that I think you have to figure out what it is you're allowed to do legally and you don't want to get your team involved in an area that they're just not they don't that's not what they're there to do. But
That's right. That's right. And they're often the front lines on a lot of these, heavy topics or conversations and kind of filtering them, through to us. So it's a tough line of work to be dealing with people kind of at their worst, all day, every day. I think it does give you tremendous joy and passion when you get to see somebody come out on the other side of that
yeah,
situation, but that's not always the end result, sadly.
yeah. So yeah, definitely mental health. But like also with your attorneys and paralegals, do you discuss or talk about mental health at all?
Not nearly as much as we should. Just being perfectly honest, it's something that I think is not talked about nearly enough. I'd love to hear, suggestions on how, you've seen firms kind of approach that or maybe embrace it more on a firm-wide level.
Mhm. I mean, you can just keep it really simple. And do you have like lunch and learns or anything like that?
We do, yeah, we do lunch and learns.
Yeah, so you could keep it simple and have maybe somebody in the community come in and be a guest speaker.
Yeah, that's great.
I
It,
don't know, somebody from the hospital or I'm not, therapist or support group, somebody that, they know what they're doing and they can just educate everybody um
yeah,
on how to do their own self-care.
that makes perfect sense. And I think from a client standpoint, there's actually more services out there than ever before that make it easy for us to get them some help. There's the telemedicine now, counseling, PTSD, whereas before we'd have to force them to get an appointment and physically go somewhere. And now within 24 hours, we can have a counselor, on the phone with them, treating them, for their case.
Exactly, exactly. But I mean, you can just keep it simple and do that. Just start with that and the rest will follow. You'll know what to do after that.
That's right.
Now, when
Um,
you said intake and marketing though, did you say that? I mean, so let me ask you this. Are they one department?
Nope, two separate departments. And in
Oh,
my mind,
I was hoping you were going to tell me, yeah, they're one department.
no, two separate departments. In my mind, they're both foundational pillars of the
Yep.
firm. I mean, I like to view intake is equally as important as marketing. And, I think serve different roles, but when I first started, I think I did blend them together a lot more. And then I've kind of realized it for us, at least, I think it makes sense for us to have them as kind of separate pillars.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's great no matter what, as long as like everybody's on the same page. Speaking of that, let me ask you a question. I'm curious about. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, so 30 years now, and the reason I'm saying that is still today, I find that not, I mean, a good amount of managing partners, for example, they talk about intake being important, and they maybe do so at a conference or something, but when it comes to actually taking action and doing something about it, they don't do it. So you're on that side of the fence. Can you tell me what that's all about? They're worried. They're worried. They find that there's a problem, but then they're like, yeah, we'll just keep going.
Yeah, I wish I had, a great answer to give. I feel like intake is something that a lot of firms are just now starting to open their eyes to, really. I mean, for decades, I never heard that word even used in terms of the practice of law, and sales was not ever anything that you ever heard merged with law. And I mean, I think the same principles apply now that have always applied when it comes to attracting clients and pitching to them. But it seems like the mindset is starting to change a little bit across the legal industry, and there is more of an embracement of, intake and chase policies. But I think there's just still this kind of mindset out there that a lot of attorneys have, that if the business, if somebody's wants to hire them, they're going to reach out to them, or that that they're not going to chase somebody if they're not answering the phone. I think we're still stuck in a lot of the like 80s and 90s type mentality, where one phone call was enough, and it's just such a different world now. But and I also think people are worried about possibly rubbing someone the wrong way to an extreme with intake. Like, they're so worried that extra call or that extra text may run somebody off versus attract them here. But I think from a big picture standpoint, I mean, it's the numbers that, suggest it's a no-brainer to continue following up until they either leave them alone or, one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be strategic about it, but not everybody's your client.
That's right.
What about AI? What are your thoughts about AI, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously am not, going to ever be using it to cite cases or, hallucinate cases. And sadly, that's all we see in the headlines, is, fake cases and briefs and, how dangerous it is. But to me, it's been like an absolute game changer from an operational standpoint. And even with intake, I mean, we use it. Our calls are recorded and then summarized, transcribed and summarized by AI. And so rather than having to listen to those calls, I can get, a very quick synopsis on them. As the AI can, even rate sentiment now, and, can actually score leads. And so it's got so much potential beyond, writing briefs for you that I think a lot of people are ignoring, or, I've heard some firms are even banning the use of it, which is just mind blowing to me. I guess they're so worried about the legal work, somehow causing some sort of issue with AI, that they're ignoring it on the management side.
Huh. Okay. I love it. I mean, I think it's a game changer all the way around. And what's really, really interesting about it, though, is that AI will be more efficient with your chasing. Because I mean, the humans, unless you have a full department full of people, they're just not getting into them fast enough, regardless of the reason. Not, but AI can.
That's right. I'm
So, yeah.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the AI voices. I've actually seen some firms have gone as far as to have the AI fielding the leads and conversing with the potential clients. And I'm not there yet. I mean, I'm willing to consider it at some point, but where we are in the South, I feel like that could really, backfire on me if somebody thinks we're, using robots instead of people to kind of make that first impression.
Yeah. Well, so I fully support it. Um, you can have someone from, like an AI sound for the South, I'm just saying.
That's
But
right.
uh, I definitely support it. But I don't, you have to be strategic. I don't think you should just like pull the plug on your staff and just put in AI. And I think it's important to make sure that your AI attendant doesn't sound like a robot. You don't want to just like, oh, this is a great idea. Let's just go plug this AI in and everybody else is gone. And yeah, so you just have to be intentional and strategic about it. And that part about people knowing, I think it's just you just have to do it in a positive way. I think you should educate people and let them know that yeah, I'm Mary, I'm the intake specialist, but I also have Jenny over here, and she's my assistant, and she helps me when I get overwhelmed. And I think the world is, it's going to take time, but they're getting used to it. There's people are getting used to it. There's AI all over the place and they don't even realize it.
That's right.
I don't think it's good to just do it and throw it in and that's it. Just got to be strategic about it and take steps and know when it's time to just go maybe somewhat all the way. But did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. I mean, and I've heard some that I mean, they've made light years worth of strides in just the last year in terms of how conversational it is and natural it sounds. And it feels like we're not far from seeing a lot more of that on intake.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Well, I think like it's here and everybody just wants to get comfortable with it. But, test everything. Just test it.
That's right.
Yeah.
I should have shared some of the numbers earlier. I think just to highlight kind of the, where we were before intake versus where we are now. I joined the firm in 2014 and we were signing about 165 new cases up a year every year for my first 8 years here. 2022 was the first year we started this intake road. We brought on lead docket late 2021. We hired our intake manager late 2021. We actually pulled back funds from marketing in 2022, that campaign I had mentioned that was kind of a whiff. And that's what kind of funded our intake start. And we signed up 363 cases that year in 2022, and started doing a little more marketing after that, and then hit 503 and then, close to 600 last year. And so we rapidly grew and rapidly scaled, and it wasn't a result of more marketing. It was a result of just cleaning our own processes up and really honing in on intake. And I was mind blown by the numbers that were there on the curtain.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's excellent. That is really excellent. Just focusing on it. Huge, really, really good. And you have a great intake manager. So, upward and onward and just keep growing, Ben.
That's right. Now the hard part where we have to actually, get more cases and more leads. And I'm learning that's a lot harder than cleaning up your intake. And so for attorneys out there, if you haven't, optimized intake yet, I think that's by far the cheapest and quickest and easiest way to pump some, supercharged growth into the firm.
Yeah. And it doesn't really take that much effort, really. I mean, you need to focus on it and pay attention and make sure that they get trained, and then just keep training them over and over and over again and recognize them. So, but it's really been great talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. I've enjoyed it, and I know we'll get to chat more at TGR Live.
I know. Yeah, we'll be there together, so that'll be wonderful.
That sounds great. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, Ben. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Lawyers Tell All, where Chris Mullins takes you on a journey with lawyers in the trenches who show you the realities of what it takes to succeed in this chaotic, crowded, ever-changing profession. Remember to visit our website at www.lawyerstellall.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on Lawyers Tell All.